want to talk to you today about something that's going to sound completely reckless. Something that will make you question whether you should take any career advice from me at all. Here it is. The career move that makes you look stupid, that makes your friends concerned, your family confused, your LinkedIn connections question your judgment, might be the smartest decision you'll ever make. That choice everyone's telling you not to make, the one that looks like you're throwing away everything you've built, that might be exactly what you need to do. Now, I can already feel your anxiety rising. You're thinking, wait, are you seriously suggesting I should ignore practical considerations, ignore financial stability, make decisions that look objectively bad? And no, I'm not suggesting blind recklessness. I'm not advocating for impulsive career suicide. But I am saying this. We've been taught to optimize our careers for what looks good from the outside, for what makes sense on paper, for what we can explain to others without apologetic stammering. And in doing so, we often make choices that are sensible but soul-crushing, safe but suffocating, impressive but meaningless. Because here's what no one tells you. The career moves that make perfect sense rarely lead anywhere interesting. The logical next steps, the incremental promotions, the safe pivots that everyone understands, those keep you on a track. And tracks are designed to take you to predetermined destinations. But what if you don't actually want to go where that track leads? What if the destination everyone assumes you're heading toward is somewhere you never chose to go in the first place? Let me ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly, just yourself. If no one would ever know about your career, if you couldn't tell anyone what you did, if it wouldn't appear on your resume, if it couldn't be used to impress people at dinner parties, would you still want the career you're currently pursuing? Would you still make the next logical move you're planning? Or are you optimizing for how it looks rather than how it feels? If you hesitated before answering, we need to talk about what you're actually doing with your life. Let's go back to where we learned this completely backwards approach to career decisions. For most of human history, careers weren't really choices. You did what your family did, what your class did, what your position in society determined. A blacksmith's son became a blacksmith. A farmer's daughter married a farmer. Social mobility existed, but was rare. You didn't agonize over career choices because there weren't that many choices to make. But then modernity happened. Industrialization created new occupations. Education became more accessible. The idea emerged that you could be anything you wanted. And with this liberation came a new kind of anxiety, the anxiety of choice. If you could be anything, how do you choose? How do you know if you're making the right decision? How do you avoid wasting your potential? And so a whole industry emerged to help you optimize your career. Career counselors, aptitude tests, 5-year plans, strategic networking, personal branding, all designed to help you make smart, strategic, explainable career decisions. All operating on the same assumption, that you should maximize your economic value, your status, your upward trajectory. That good career decisions are ones that increase your options, your earning potential, your prestige. This advice created a template. You go to the best school you can get into. You pursue the most prestigious path available to you. You take the job with the most recognized company or the highest salary. You move up systematically, associate to senior associate, to VP to senior VP. You build a resume that tells a coherent story of continuous advancement. You become the kind of person who looks successful, whose career makes sense, who can answer, "What do you do?" without embarrassment. And this template works. It really does. If your goal is to look successful, to have financial security, to achieve a kind of default respectability, the template will get you there. You'll have the job title, the salary, the LinkedIn profile that makes people nod approvingly. You'll be able to explain your career trajectory to your parents without them worrying. You'll be legible to the world. But here's the problem. Legibility is often the enemy of aliveness. The career that makes perfect sense to everyone else is often the career that makes you feel dead inside. Because you're not optimizing for what you actually want. You're optimizing for what you think you should want, for what looks good, for what you can defend, for what won't make you look stupid. The economist John Maynard Keynes wrote, "Worldly wisdom teaches that it is better for reputation to fail conventionally than to succeed unconventionally." He meant that we'd rather fail while doing what everyone else is doing than succeed by doing something that looks weird. Because conventional failure is explainable. The market crashed, the industry changed, bad timing. But unconventional success is disturbing. It suggests that the rules everyone else is following might be wrong. And if you succeed by breaking the rules, what does that say about everyone who's still following them? So we follow the rules. We make the sensible moves. We stay on the track. And we tell ourselves we're being responsible, being smart, being strategic. But really, we're just being cowards. We're more afraid of looking stupid than we are of being unhappy. We're more afraid of judgment than we are of regret. Let me tell you about my own experience with this, because I've made both kinds of career moves, the ones that looked smart and the ones that looked stupid. Early in my career, I made all the conventional choices. I pursued the prestigious path. I took the jobs that looked good on paper. I built a resume that made sense. And I was miserable. Not dramatically, catastrophically miserable, just quietly, steadily, increasingly aware that I was living someone else's definition of success. But I couldn't articulate this to anyone because the life I was living looked good. How do you complain about a successful career? How do you explain that you feel trapped in a life that looks, from the outside, like it's working? People would say, "But you're doing so well." And I'd think, "Yes, but I don't actually care about any of this." Then I made a move that looked stupid. I left a stable, prestigious position to pursue something that didn't fit any conventional career narrative, something I couldn't easily explain, something that made people furrow their brows and ask, "But what will you do after that?" Something that looked, objectively, like a step backward, or at best a step sideways into irrelevance. And you know what happened? I became alive again. Not because the new path was objectively better. In many ways, it was harder, more uncertain, less prestigious. But because it was mine. Because I'd chosen it based on what I actually wanted, rather than what made sense. Because I'd stopped optimizing for legibility and started optimizing for aliveness. Here's what I've noticed about career moves that look stupid. They often involve one or more of the following: taking a pay cut to do work that matters more to you, leaving a prestigious company to join a startup or unknown organization, pivoting to an entirely different field where you have to start over as a beginner, taking time off that creates a gap in your resume, choosing the interesting project over the promotable one, pursuing something creative or unconventional that doesn't fit a clear career narrative. All of these moves make you look less strategic, less focused, less like someone who has their career figured out. They create awkward silences at networking events when people ask what you do. They make older relatives worry that you're throwing your life away. They make former colleagues wonder what happened to you. They make you, in the eyes of conventional wisdom, look stupid. But here's what conventional wisdom misses. The most interesting careers, the most fulfilling lives, the most significant contributions, they rarely come from following the template. They come from people who were willing to make moves that didn't make sense at the time, who zigged when everyone else zagged, who chose meaning over status, interest over prestige, growth over security. The psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who studied flow and creativity, found that people who make significant creative contributions often have non-linear career paths. They don't climb a clear ladder, they move laterally, they experiment, they pursue seemingly unrelated interests, they take risks that look unjustifiable. And from the outside, their careers often look messy, unfocused, even self-sabotaging. But from the inside, they're following a thread of genuine interest rather than a prescribed path. Think about the people whose careers you genuinely admire. Not the people who achieved conventional success, there are millions of those, but the people who built something unique, who created work that matters, who seem to have found a way to live that's authentically theirs. How many of them followed a straight, logical path? How many of them made only sensible moves that everyone understood at the time? Very few. Most of them made at least one move that looked stupid, that made people question their judgment, that couldn't be easily explained or defended. And that stupid-looking move was often the hinge that allowed their entire career to pivot towards something that actually mattered to them. Here's something else I've observed. The career moves that look stupid often look stupid precisely because they prioritize something other than what we're supposed to prioritize. We're supposed to maximize income, status, security, upward mobility. So when you make a move that sacrifices any of those things for something less tangible, for meaning, for learning, for autonomy, for alignment with your values, it looks irrational. It looks like you don't understand how careers work. But maybe you understand something more important, that careers are not separate from lives, that you will spend the majority of your waking hours working, that optimizing your career for external markers of success while ignoring whether you actually want to be doing the work is a recipe for a successful, miserable life, that it's possible to win at a game that ultimately doesn't matter to you. The philosopher Charles Taylor wrote about authenticity, the idea that each person has an original way of being human, and failing to live according to that originality means missing the point of your life. But authenticity in career terms usually looks like stupidity to others, because your original way of being doesn't fit the templates. It doesn't follow the script. It requires making moves that can't be easily justified by conventional career logic. Let me give you some examples of moves that look stupid but might be smart. Leaving a high-paying job to take a lower-paying one that gives you time. Everyone will tell you you're crazy, you're going backwards, you're leaving money on the table. But what if the time is what you actually need? What if the high-paying job was consuming every hour of your life, leaving you no space to think, to create, to be with people you love? What if you're trading money you don't have time to enjoy for time that money can't buy back? Quitting a prestigious company to join an unknown one. People will think you're throwing away your credential, your brand, your network. But what if the prestigious company had become a comfortable prison? What if everyone there was playing politics instead of doing interesting work? What if the unknown company is actually doing something that matters, and you want to be part of building something rather than maintaining something? Starting over in a new field at an age when you're supposed to be established. People will wonder why you're throwing away your expertise, your seniority, your accumulated advantage. But what if your expertise was in something you no longer care about? What if being a beginner again, while humiliating, is also invigorating? What if the feeling of learning something new is worth more to you than the feeling of being an expert at something dead? Taking time off that creates a gap in your resume. People will worry that you're making yourself less employable, that you're losing momentum, that you'll struggle to explain the gap. But what if the gap is where the actual living happens? What if you need time to think, to recover, to figure out what you actually want, rather than just responding to the next opportunity? What if the gap is the most productive period of your life, even though it produces nothing measurable? Choosing the interesting project over the promotable one. People will think you're not ambitious, not strategic, not playing the game correctly. But what if the game is rigged? What if climbing the ladder just means more of what you already don't want? What if the interesting project teaches you something, connects you with people who matter, opens a door you didn't know existed? All of these moves sacrifice something legible, money, prestige, career capital, momentum, for something less tangible. And because we can't easily measure or display the less tangible thing, it looks like a bad trade. It looks stupid. But the less tangible thing might be exactly what makes life worth living. The sociologist Max Weber wrote about the iron cage of rationality, how modern life traps us in systems of efficiency and calculation that are rational but soulless. Career optimization is the iron cage. It makes perfect sense according to its own logic, but its own logic might be fundamentally at odds with human flourishing. So how do you know if a stupid-looking move is actually smart? How do you tell the difference between a genuinely bad decision and one that just looks bad? First, check whether you're making the decision out of fear or out of desire. Fear-based decisions that look stupid are usually actually stupid, running away from something without a clear sense of what you're running toward. But desire-based decisions that look stupid might be smart. If you're moving towards something that genuinely calls to you, even if you can't rationally justify it, that's different than just escaping something uncomfortable. Second, examine whose opinion you're worried about. If you're not making a move because of what strangers or acquaintances will think, that's probably a bad reason. They don't know you. They don't have to live your life. Their judgment is based on surface legibility, not deep understanding. But if you're worried about disappointing people who actually know and love you, parents, partners, close friends, that deserves more weight. Though even then you have to ask, are they worried because they understand something I don't? Or are they worried because my choice threatens their own conventional path? Third, consider your deathbed perspective. This sounds morbid, but it's clarifying. Imagine you're 80 years old, looking back. Will you regret the prestigious job you left? Or will you regret not leaving when you had the chance? Will you regret the time you took off? Or will you regret not taking it? Usually people don't regret the risks they took. They regret the risks they didn't take because they were too afraid of looking stupid. Fourth, ask whether you're optimizing for a story or for an experience. Are you staying on your current path because you want to be able to tell people an impressive career story, or because you actually enjoy the day-to-day experience of the work? Are you making the next move because it will look good on LinkedIn, or because you're genuinely excited about what you'll be doing? Story versus experience. External validation versus internal satisfaction. These are different optimization targets, and they often conflict. Fifth, notice whether the move expands or contracts your sense of possibility. Some stupid-looking moves are actually just stupid. They close doors, create problems, lead nowhere. But other stupid-looking moves, even if they involve stepping back in conventional terms, actually expand your sense of what's possible for your life. They introduce you to new people, new ideas, new ways of working. They make you more rather than less. And expansion, even when it looks like regression, is usually smart. 6. Consider your own history of conventional success. If you've been following the template for years and you're miserable, that's data. The template isn't working for you. Maybe it never will. So a move that looks stupid according to the template's logic might actually be a correction towards something that fits you better. But if you've never given the conventional path a fair shot, if you're early in your career or you've been flailing, then what looks like a bold, unconventional move might just be another form of avoidance. I've learned that the stupidest looking move I made was actually the smartest. And I've watched other people make stupid looking moves that led to the most alive versions of themselves I've ever seen. I've also watched people stay in careers that made perfect sense, that progressed logically, that everyone approved of, and become gradually more depleted, more disconnected, more confused about why success feels like failure. Here's the liberating truth. You're allowed to make career moves that don't make sense to other people. You're allowed to prioritize things other than money, status, and linear advancement. You're allowed to value time, autonomy, meaning, learning, alignment with your values. You're allowed to optimize for aliveness rather than legibility. And the fact that this looks stupid to people who've built their lives around conventional success doesn't mean it is stupid. It means you're playing a different game. The writer Joseph Campbell famously said, "Follow your bliss." But I think that's incomplete advice because bliss is ephemeral. I'd say instead, follow your curiosity. Follow what makes you come alive. Follow what you do even if no one would ever know about it. Follow the move that scares you because it's unconventional, not the move that scares you because it's actually harmful. And accept that following these things will make you look stupid to people who measure success by conventional metrics. They'll think you're self-sabotaging. They'll think you don't understand how careers work. They'll think you're having a crisis. Let them think that, because their understanding of how careers work is based on a template that may not fit you. And their concern, while often well-meaning, is often really about their own anxiety about having followed the template themselves. Here's what the stupid-looking move often requires. It requires you to give up the story you've been telling yourself about who you are and where you're going. The story where everything makes sense, where each step follows logically from the last, where you're always moving upward and forward. That story is comforting, it's legible, it makes you feel like you're in control. But sometimes the story you've been telling yourself is imprisoning you. Sometimes you need to make a move that breaks the narrative. That creates a plot twist you can't yet explain. That requires you to sit with not knowing what it means or where it's leading. That makes you look, from the outside, like you've lost the thread. But maybe you haven't lost the thread. Maybe you've dropped the thread you were handed and are searching for your own. And that search, while it looks aimless to others, is actually the most purposeful thing you've ever done. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard wrote, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." The career move that looks stupid now might be the one that, looking back, you see as the pivot point. The moment when you stopped living according to other people's logic and started living according to your own. The moment when you chose becoming who you are over becoming who you're supposed to be. That's not reckless, that's not naive, that's not stupid, that's courage. And courage, especially in career terms, almost always looks like stupidity to people who've chosen safety, because your courage reminds them of their cowardice. Your willingness to look stupid reminds them of how much energy they spend trying to look smart. So make the move that looks stupid. Take the pay cut for the meaningful work. Leave the prestigious company for the unknown one. Start over as a beginner in something you care about. Take the time off. Choose the interesting project. Follow the thread that doesn't lead to any recognizable destination. Risk the judgment, the confusion, the disapproval. Because the alternative is spending your life making moves that look smart to everyone else but feel dead to you. And that, in the end, is the stupidest move of all. Not because it fails by conventional metrics, it might succeed wildly, but because you'll succeed at a life you never actually wanted. You'll arrive at the destination the track was designed to take you to and realize you never wanted to be there in the first place. And that's not the kind of stupid you can explain away at 80. That's not the kind of mistake you can rationalize. That's just the slow tragedy of a life lived for legibility rather than aliveness, for approval rather than authenticity, for looking smart rather than being real. So risk looking stupid. The smartest move you ever make might be the one that makes you look like you don't know what you're doing. Because maybe you don't. Maybe no one does. Maybe we're all just making it up as we go. And the people who look like they know what they're doing are just better at hiding their uncertainty behind conventional choices. The stupid-looking move is the one that admits, I don't have it all figured out. I'm choosing based on something other than optimization. I'm willing to be a beginner again. I'm willing to disappoint people. I'm willing to break the narrative. I'm willing to look like I don't understand how careers work because maybe, just maybe, how careers are supposed to work is exactly what's keeping me from living. That's not the advice you'll get from career counselors, but it might be the advice that actually changes your life.